He was neither tall and lanky, nor short and heavy-set. When he looked at someone, he looked them in the eyes. He was the most generous-hearted of men, the most truthful of them in speech, the most mild-tempered of them, and the noblest of them in lineage. Anyone who would describe him would say, "I never saw before or after him the like of him." Muhammad, described by a contemporary.
Muhammad was a man who faced an absolutely hopeless situation. There was a whole continent, virtually, of people killing one another in an endless, hopeless vendetta, going down a chute of violence and warfare, feeling that society was coming to an end and had no hope. He gave them hope, single-handedly. In a space of 23 years, he brought peace and new hope to Arabia and a new beacon for the world.
Islam, the religion Muhammad first brought to Arabia, now claims 1.2 billion followers around the world. There are an estimated 7 million Muslims in America, where it is the country's fastest growing religion and the most diverse.
Like America itself, the Muslims in this country come from all over the world. They have a common bond, not only in their religious faith and in their mosques, but in this story of Muhammad. They all look to it. This is the source of how to behave, of how to be a constructive citizen, of how to be a good parent, of how to be a good child, of how to seek knowledge and truth. These are values that are expressed most clearly for Muslims in the story of Muhammad.
In the Quran, Allah says that Muhammad is the best example of behavior for you. And that's what he is, the guide for the way we deal with each other, and when we're in a position of authority, how we attempt to implement justice and law.
The Prophet Muhammad, he asked the question to people around him, do you love your Creator? Serve your fellow man first. What does that tell you? It tells you, forget about all this intellectual, yeah, I love God and this and that. If you're gonna, forget about talking the talk, walk the walk. You want to serve God, serve people. What more noble way to serve people than to risk your own life to save them?
September 11th has changed the whole world, and it has also put the Muslim community in the spotlight.
How about the dove installation? Is this...
Muslims have a lot of hostility being hurled at them. But this is also a time of transformation. Many people are very eager to understand Islam and want to know who is the Prophet, what is the Quran, who are the Muslims, how do they live?
Through the stories about Prophet Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. That means peace be unto you. I'm Imam Sidney Sharif, president of ICA, and also the author of a recent book. My book is titled Inmate Survival Handbook, written from an Islamic perspective. It is my hope and prayer that we will be able to relate to our audience the trauma that is caused by the inordinate number of people who are incarcerated in our country and in our states annually, and this number is increasing. Our objective as the Inmates Corrections Association is to do what we can to help reduce the rate of recidivism and the kind of inmate violence that is depicted on TV and VCDs and in all sorts of manners. We're certainly concerned about the kind of trauma that is inflicted on families when someone is incarcerated, when a crime is committed against someone, the trauma is affecting that family also, the family of the victim, as well as the members of the community. This is a great concern that we have, and even though it may seem like it's an impossible task, ICA feels that we have to begin somewhere. And our message is for you here in Tucson in particular, and in the United States in general, as individuals, to begin to address this problem. There are many ways that we can do this. I take issue with parents who don't really monitor their children and set good examples for their children, because oftentimes we find that it is our youth that follow the patterns of behavior of their parents. And it is our youth who, if they are not monitored properly, who don't follow the behavior of their parents, they will follow some other negative behavior that usually impacts them while they're in school. I'm going to continue to show parts of the film that we started out with so that we can get a breadth and understanding of what Islam is all about as it relates to people who are incarcerated. Islam offers a sense of direction, and it offers a criterion or a standard for judgment between right and wrong. If we don't know the difference between right and wrong, then we're not really a part of human society. We say, well, right and wrong is what I make it. But no, that's not true. Our hearts tells us the difference between right and wrong. Our minds can confuse us. So in Islam, and we stress this with men who are incarcerated, let your intelligence rule, but let it rule as a servant to your heart. You know when you're being mistreated, others know when they're being mistreated. Human behavior dictates that we want for our brother or sister that which we want for ourselves. And we all seek peace and harmony and tranquility. And that peace has to first come from you as an individual, within your own mind, within your own heart and soul. You must be at peace with yourself before you can peacefully live with your family, your neighbors, or your associates. You should not feel threatened by another person's status, because Quran tells us that God created you in the best mold and put something of His Spirit in you and made your forms most beautiful. So in understanding this and accepting this, this will place you in a state of peace, because you're not concerned about whether or not you look like the person that you think you ought to look like. You look like the person that was created by your Creator. And He says He is most satisfied with your form and your shape. So why should you concern yourself with trying to please others and be like others when the goal is to know yourself and to be yourself? Be what you were intended to be. And Quran speaks to your logic. And it also gives you examples of how you should behave. If you're involved in a joint task with another person, don't always seek to pick up the light end of the load and have them pick up the heavy end. That's not justice. Don't always seek to get the bigger half of the pie and leave the smaller half to someone else. That's not justice. Again, we have to learn as individuals, especially in an incarcerated state, that we have to survive as human beings regardless of the conditions that we find ourselves in. We do not have to become what we think the public wants us to become simply because we are in an uncomfortable situation. We are not animals, although some biologists will say there's no difference between you and another animal, but that is not true. Humans respond from the heart. They think about the welfare of other human beings, not instinctively, as an animal would think simply in terms of survival. Yes, you want to survive physically, but at the same time, you're very much concerned about the survival of your fellow man. In prison, it's a very difficult situation. And you have to deal with people who have been sociopaths or are still sociopaths, who have emotional problems. You may have some problems yourself. So when you look at someone else and you think that they are a terrible person, someone that you don't want to be like, see yourself in that person. You may have some of the same traits that that person has. Again, we said, know yourself and be yourself. This is the only way that men and women can enter the correctional system and survive and come out whole and not have to concern themselves with wanting to have to come back into prison because they cannot survive outside. Whether we know it or not as the public, many people who have been incarcerated have been, as we say, we use another term for that, institutionalized. And there's another term that has been used also. They've been shaped and molded just like you would shape and mold any animal that you capture. You make it do what you want it to do. You make it think the way you want it to think. But a human being has his own values. He can set his own chart, and you can do the same thing in prison as you have the freedom to do outside. With your mind and your heart, they must come into balance with each other. And again, we say the message to inmates and the message to the general public is to want for your brother what you want for yourself. This is Islam. Islam simply means a state of surrender or submission to the will of God. It is not religion as we understand religion here in the Western world. Islam is a way of life. It is also referred to as a balanced way. There are no extremes in Islam. There are no extremes in Islam. Radicalism is not a part of Islam when you look at the definition of the word. So, simply because the public has given this way of life a bad name here in America, it is not that way. This is not Islam. As a matter of fact, while we're on the subject, I want you all to understand this, that Morocco was an Islamic country back in 1776. Yes, that was a long time ago. That was the first country to recognize the independence of the United States of America. I'm going to say that again. Morocco, which is an Islamically based country, was the first country on earth to recognize America as an independent country in 1776. If you don't believe me, you go and ask your teacher whether or not that funny-looking man I saw on Access was telling the truth. Or go on the internet and do your own research, do your own homework. And you'll find that England didn't step up and say, okay, you got your independence. No, they tried to destroy the men who established the colonies here. They tried to destroy them. So you remember this, when you think in terms of Islam being something distasteful, something that doesn't make sense, that Islam was a spirit that recognized America as an independent nation in 1776. Morocco did that. And as a matter of fact, while we're on the subject, study your Constitution, study your, quote, founding fathers, and you'll find that one of your presidents, Thomas Jefferson, referred to the Quran, and he has a Quran, there's a Quran, a two-part Quran in his library, Thomas Jefferson. he referred to that book, and others did too, before America became independent, in order to write their Constitution. In reality, your Constitution, our Constitution of these United States of America, is an Islamic document. It's an Islamic document. As a matter of fact, look at your Shriners, your Freemasons, people in some of these organizations that you know very little about, but you are impacted by a lot of them. They have been studying the creed of Islam for a long time, unknown to you. As a matter of fact, when you go to the Medina temple or go to some of the circuses and places like that, well, we know Medina. If you don't know Medina, that was a country that was established through the agency of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the first country that was, in essence, a United Nations, because they had people there from all races and all religions there in Medina. And when you go to your Shriners places now, their temples and your Freemasonry places, you'll find Arabic calligraphy. They have the Quran in some of their meetings. They say in their secret meetings, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. These are truths. These are realities. These are not things that Imam Sidney Sharif, the co-chairman, one of the co-chairmen of the Islamic Corrections Association of America, dreamed up. No, this is reality. And this is a part of what we do. We educate ourselves and we educate people who need to know about where they stand with reference to what is right and what is wrong. And I simply want to say that if you really are interested in reducing crime in America and reducing the rate of incarceration, it is important for you to get involved. Don't stand by or sit by and allow your representatives to vote to have an increase in the number of prisons that are being built and an increase in the number of people to be arrested. Because when you began to support private prison systems, private correctional systems, you are falling into one of the biggest man-made traps in the world. You are agreeing to allow your citizens to be arrested and processed like cattle, while at the same time the owners, the stockbrokers, the corporation owners of those prisons are going to the bank and taking your money somewhere else, and is not benefiting you at all. So let us not continue to allow ourselves and our inmate population and other people to be used like cattle. You know, cattle, they just do what cattle are supposed to do. You take a cow, you put him out in the pasture, he eats grass. He has no value until you slaughter him and you break him up into different portions of meat, and then he is value added. So don't allow the human population to continue to go in this direction in our country. America has one of the largest it has the largest prison population in the world. Our civilian population is only 300 million people. And that's a very small population for some of our other countries. China has over 1.5 billion citizens. China doesn't have nearly the amount of prisoners that we have arrested. That's not a big problem for China. India, another large population, they don't have this kind of problem. We're spending more money keeping our citizens incarcerated. Of course, they've done something wrong. They must be punished for that. The public has to be protected from within itself, but there are better ways to do it. And these are some of the things that we have to begin to address as citizens in this country. One of the ways that we can do it is begin to challenge our state and federal representatives. Have them to lobby for you and work for you and not allow lobbyists to go to them and give them money to vote to advance the private correctional systems that we have going on in America now. It's a disgrace. I just learned the other day that there are prisons in some states whose inmates are competing with businesses in other states in making goods and presenting services, office furniture, things of this nature. And they are saying our citizens can't get jobs, our businesses can't keep running because the private prison industry is competing with them. This makes absolutely no sense, and as citizens we can demand and get better. Lobbyists are no better than pimps. And those of you, if you don't know what a pimp is, ask your child, they can tell you. They go out and they find weak-minded people that are in state and federal government and pay them money to go and advance their cause to legalize and to advance the interests, the special interests, you hear that all the time, special interests of private prison manufacturers. If you could get the contract just to make candy bars for one prison, you'd be in pretty good shape, to show you the value of that. Now, I want you all to do your own research. Begin your own campaign. Call your state and federal representatives and ask them first, why are you supporting privatizing correctional facilities? Why are you supporting that? Why are you not trying to support better schools, better teachers, better educational facilities so that our children can advance and not become a part of this juvenile correctional system that is growing and feeding your adult correctional systems? It is what it is. And now here in 2012, we should not continue to keep our eyes closed while our children are suffering. They're not getting an adequate education. Their schools are collapsing. And they say, the states, we don't have the money. But they have the money when it comes to building prisons. They have the money when it comes to hiring prison guards. They have the money when it comes to establishing courts and lawyers, both on the defense side and the prosecutorial side. We can always find money for policemen, but we cannot find money for teachers and students. This, to me, makes absolutely no sense, and this is what the Islamic Inmates Correctional Association is all about, trying to make sense out of nonsense. And we also put the burden on the inmates, and we let them know in no uncertain terms that you are responsible for what you do, you're responsible for what you don't do. You are accountable. You were not created just to roam around and not be responsible or accountable to anything, anybody. Animal societies won't tolerate a member of that society just not participating in that society. It will expel it from that society. It will abandon it, or it will destroy it. So human society brings its burdens, but at the same time it brings its rewards. And these are the kind of rewards that we want our people who are incarcerated to begin to enjoy. You can enjoy that reward of peace and tranquility even though you are incarcerated. I don't care if you're in the hole, in isolation. Almighty God, Allah, who is God, we call Allah God, hears your every prayer. And it is up to you to accept the reality that there is a God and that He is your protector. And you don't have to depend on your gang-banging friends, your hoodlums or your goons or whatever they call themselves for protection while you're in prison. It's ridiculous. He doesn't give you life. He can't take away your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the protector of life. He gives it as a gift, and he's a protector of death. He gives it death as a gift. You will learn how to defend yourself physically if you simply submit yourself to the will of God. Thanks for having me here in your home on Tucson Access Tucson, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again. Have a good evening. Bye now.